Okay, the last unit in Math 3 is a short unit on statistics, so we're going to fit that in these last 3 weeks. The first part is just introducing what is statistics and how do we get our, acquire our statistics scientifically. Um, and so the first lesson in this is on what types of studies can we do depending on the situation. Um, we know that we get data all the time. We collect data as teachers. We're always collecting data on your scores, how you did on the assignments, things like that. Statistics is how do we get that data, collect it, how do we organize it, where do we put it, and then how do we analyze it. And if you take further class in statistics, which most of you will end up taking because most of you are going to be going to college, um, you're going to learn all of these, how to do them properly. And if you take AP statistics with me, you'll also learn that. But in this unit, we're just giving you a quick intro to these things. So data officially is, the definition is numbers in context. And we decide how we will gather the data based on what is our purpose. What do we need to know? What are we trying to find out? So our goal for today is to name the methods of collecting data. No, name the methods of studying data. Studying data and understand when each method is appropriate. I guess collecting would be an okay word too. But okay, so let's start with the first type of study, which is an observational study. So the example would be a team of zoologists wants to study the habits of an endangered bird species. Why wouldn't those zoologists want to disturb or interact with the birds? Normally when I do this in class, we start out having a great discussion. We start having a great discussion on how we could get the data without disturbing them. Well, why wouldn't we want to get the data? What would that do to them? Well, the birds are going to act differently, right? It would change their behavior. So change the behavior of the birds. We don't want to. Don't want to. Change the behavior of the birds. So how could they do that? Well, if you want to stop and think about it and come back, that's fine. In the discussion when we have this in class, a lot of people say, several people will say, we could, at this point, they could do, last semester somebody said use drones. That's a new one. I haven't had that one before, but that would work. Hidden cameras. Or the most typical one is using binoculars. They might be outdated at this point. Probably drones and hidden cameras are going to be more popular if you have the money. If it's just somebody in the woods looking at birds, they're probably not going to fly a drone. But if it's a statistical study and they have the money, the drones or the hidden cameras would probably work better. So an observational study officially is a study which allows information to be gathered without disturbing or impacting the subjects at all. So you don't want to interfere with their behavior. I like to talk about sleep studies in this point, and usually at least one of my students has known somebody who's done a sleep study. So my mom has had to do this a few times. They put all these sensors on you, and then they tell you to go to sleep, which that's kind of funny. But and then they watch how you sleep, and they figure out if you have sleep apnea or other things interfering with your sleep. So an observational study, no interference with the subjects. You don't interact with the subject at all. Most of the time observational studies are used when it's not practical or ethical to do an experiment. We're going to talk about experiments later in this lesson. So one would be trying to establish a link between smoking and lung cancer. You can't pay people to smoke, right? So you can't do an experiment, because an experiment you have to have some people smoking and some people not smoking, and it has to be completely randomly designed. So you'd have to do an observational study on that and find people that smoke and find people that don't smoke and trace their occurrence of lung cancer in life. So that would be highly unethical because you'd be interfering with their lives and their health. So the next type of study is a survey or sample survey where we're trying to find data on large populations. You've done surveys before. We all have. Rarely do we get the telephone calls and answer those anymore, but you've done questionnaires, you guys have done Instagram polls, um, Google, whatever they're called, you know what I mean, through Google Forms, and then you also could have people just come up to you in the hall or in the mall or somewhere and ask you questions. Normally, we do a project on this unit where you would do a survey, and you may have encountered a student from first semester asking the questions for their survey. So that's what this is. Um, in TV, they're used. Most kids recognize Family Feud. A lot of my kids don't even know what American Idol is anymore, but that's where the performers are, whether they stay on the show or not, is based solely on the number of people that call in and vote for them. So, and the person that wins gets money and a record contract and things. Dancing with the Stars, another one. The votes of the judges and the people that call in and vote are used. And then Family Feud is not a reality show, but the surveys, and I have no idea how they do the surveys for Family Feud, but the survey data is used in answering the questions. You guys, most of you have seen that show. So I have a large population of New York City. Am I going to interview everyone in New York City if I want to know how many like chocolate ice cream? No, you're not going to. It would be pretty much impossible. Sometimes it would take too long or cost too much money. The study where you interview everybody in a population is actually called a census, and this is a census year, so your parents probably did receive the information on how to fill in the census form. It just asks how many people live in your house, and they need to know that to help create the budgets for local government, school districts. Everything is based on that census data, and they do that every 10 years. Excuse me. It's important to understand what we mean when we say population in statistics. When I'm talking about a population, that's the people I'm interested in, or the objects or animals or whatever we're interested in knowing something about. So if I want to know something about the Rocky River students, my population would be the Rocky River students. You could survey everybody in Rocky River High School, and then you would get a census of the Rocky River High School population. You could also survey a few people from each class, or some type of sample survey where you don't ask everybody, but you get the information based on the people you ask. The next lesson talks more about how we do that. So a sample survey is carried out using a sampling method, so only part of the population. So a sample is a part of the population, and we survey a sample instead of the whole population, and usually that's what's done in almost all statistical studies. Sample surveys must be carefully designed because if you want to know something about a population, then your sample must represent the population. So if I wanted to know about everyone in Rocky River High School, I would not only ask freshman homeroom classes. I would probably ask a couple freshman homeroom classes, a couple sophomore, a couple junior, a couple senior, or some way of dividing kids up. So you want that sample to be representative so that you can make conclusions about all of the people in the population. So in our case, it would be all the Rocky River students. We don't want a biased question. In other words, you wouldn't say, "Don't you think the food in the cafeteria sucks?" You wouldn't say that because you might think that, but that would be a biased question. You don't want your question to be biased. You would have to say, "What is your opinion?" or rate the food in the cafeteria from 1 to 10 or something like that. So if you do a survey, you have to try to be unbiased because you do not want to lead the response. And in the project that we usually do, we usually have you create one biased question and one unbiased question, ask two different groups those two different questions, and then draw some conclusions. It's a fun project, but we don't get to do it this year, sorry. If you take AP Stats, you'll probably do it in there. So the last type of study, so far we've talked about observational studies where you do not interact with your subjects. Then we talked about a survey or sample survey where you ask them a question or you try to get a response about a certain thing, a certain trait. An experiment is a process where you get results that are called outcomes. In an experiment, you always have a treatment group, or an experimental or treatment group, and a control group. The treatment group has something done to them. We use an experiment to find out, like, if there's a new pharmaceutical drug coming out on the market. Like right now, they're trying to study ways to treat the COVID-19, CoV-2 virus, and with vaccines or some other type of treatment. So there's people who are getting those treatments, and some people are not. They're comparing. See, this could be an example of unethical, because then you'd have to give them the virus, right? So I don't know anything about the studies they're doing. I know they did it with apes, and they did give some of them the virus and some of them not. But I don't know how that would be ethical with humans, so I don't know how they're actually doing the studies. But they get a treatment, and then we see if that affects them. You also have, so you have an experimental group. Those are the people that do get the treatment. So it might be a process. I might give an incentive to my students to get them to do a certain thing, and then I check to see if it does cause them. Like in previous times, I did not give extra credit for getting your homework done in class, and maybe today I decided to give you extra credit if you get all your homework done during class. I don't usually have to do that with your class, but a lot of times I have to do that to get kids to do their work. You might get a reward for getting a certain grade on a test, things like that. An action or a substance. We already talked about the substance. This thing that you get, whatever they give the experimental group, is called a treatment. So the experiment always has a treatment, and it should always have a control group, because if you don't have anything to compare to, you can't really say that the treatment did anything. So you have to have a group that does not get the treatment also, and that's called the placebo group. The control group gets the placebo, which is, you've heard the term sugar pill, a pill that does not do anything. And there's a lot more to it than that, but right now we're just giving you the basics. And then you compare the results of the experimental group and control group and analyze those results. We're not going to be doing that in this class, but in AP Stats we definitely do a lot of that. Okay, so now let's try some. If you need to stop and read this, that's fine. So we've got Spirit Week approaching, and Student Council wants more students to participate in the Spirit Week. So they decide to go and ask the students what their favorite themes are. Since they don't have much time or funding, they'll not be able to talk to every student. So what are they going to do? I know you probably already know the answer, but I'm going to break it down just in case. So the first thing they're going to do is remember the types of methods they could use. They could use a sample survey, an observation, or an experiment. And what do those do? Well, in an observational study, there is no interaction. Experiment, there's a treatment, and a survey, basically they're responding to a question. So which one of these is it? Well, they're basically asking them a question, right? They're asking them what they prefer for Spirit Week. So you probably already knew, but this is a survey. You don't have to write all this out. You can just write survey and why. So therefore, the method that best matches the situation is a sample survey in which the council members will survey a portion of the student population rather than the entire population. Excuse me. Okay, I'm going to let you, if you downloaded the notes, if you didn't download the notes, you might want to take a picture of this and then write down in your notes what the answer is. But if you did download the notes, go ahead and stop the video, do these last three, and then come back. If you weren't able to print the notes, then just keep going with me. Okay, so this one, we have the same student council. Spirit Week is here. They need to know how each theme affects student participation. So did it work to let them pick the themes? Are more people participating? They're going to sit in front of the cafeteria during lunch each day to count the number of students who are dressed up. Well, are they asking a question? Is there no interaction? Or is there a treatment? Because remember, experiment, you have a treatment. Observational study, no interaction. Survey, you ask a question. Well, in this case, they're just counting. They're not talking to the people. So we have an observational study there. Number 3. Now, to get people to dress up, they're going to give away raffle prizes. Every student who dresses up gets a raffle ticket, and then at the end of the week, they're going to council members will gather data on how many people participate, compare that with the data they have gathered from their observational study. What method of data gathering will closely match what the student council is trying to accomplish with the raffle prizes? Well, in this case, we have an incentive. So an incentive is actually a treatment. So this is an experiment. And then we've got our last one, and we've got the school nurse, and she wants to know the average weight of backpacks. Lately, there has been a marked increase in the number of students coming to the office complaining of back pain. After researching factors that lead to back pain, she found heavy backpacks have led to injuries. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that students' backpacks weigh no more than 10 to 20% of their weight. She'd like to know the average weight. So what is she going to do? Well, is she going to go around and observe the weight of the backpacks? How could she do that? Is there a treatment here? No. So this is actually a sample survey. You have to sample survey. You could ask every kid in the school, but you might as well just ask a sample of students in the school. Okay, so now you have a little assignment. I did not do lesson quizzes for this week. So you just have 2 assignments, one for this lesson and one for the next lesson. And they're both on Canvas. They're not worksheets. So you'll just do those on Canvas. All right, thanks.